He thought he was being noble. He thought he was being kind. He thought love meant showing up no matter the cost. So when she told him she was a single mom, he didn't flinch. He leaned in, paid her rent, covered her child's school supplies, even looked into custody laws. He said it was just support. But the truth? He was giving away something far bigger than his money. He wasn't building a life. He was surrendering one. And the saddest part, he never saw it coming. Not the shift, not the silence, not the consequence, until it was too late. If you're a man who's ever asked yourself, why does love feel so one-sided? Then stay with me, because this is not an attack on single mothers. It's a warning for men who confuse sacrifice with self-worth, for men who give too much and lose themselves trying to prove it's love. He was 39. No kids, good job, stable, smart, and lonely. Not the kind of lonely you can see, not the kind that cries out for help, but the quiet kind, the kind that builds over years, in the spaces between success and silence. He had done everything right, showed up to work, helped his parents, stayed out of trouble, did the responsible thing every time, but somewhere along the way, life stopped feeling full. His house was clean, his bank account was steady, but the air in his home? Still. He'd wake up on Saturdays with no one to make coffee for, no reason to rush, no footsteps down the hall, no little voice calling Daddy. And maybe, just maybe, that ache started whispering louder than his logic. That's when she came along. She was 29, beautiful, soft-spoken, warm, wounded, but not broken. And she was a mother. Most men would have paused, would have asked questions, but not him. He didn't see it as a complication. He saw it as redemption, a second chance at something deeper. He thought, if I can love her and her child fully, maybe this is what I was meant for. So he leaned in. He offered more than attention. He offered consistency. He offered presence. He showed up with groceries, not flowers. He paid her rent, not just her compliments. He picked up her child after school, took him to the park, waited outside during piano lessons. On weekends, they'd eat pancakes together. She called him a blessing, told him he was the first man who truly understood her, the first man who didn't run when things got real. She'd post pictures on Instagram, his hands on the steering wheel, her smile in the passenger seat. Captions like, finally, a real man. And he believed it. Every word, because it wasn't just about being loved. It was about being needed. And for a man who's gone too long feeling like an accessory to other people's lives, being needed feels like purpose. So when her car broke down, he paid for repairs. When the child got sick, he took off work to help. When bills piled up, he told her, don't worry, I got it. And he meant it. He wasn't pretending. He wasn't performing. He was all in. But slowly, almost silently, something shifted. The thank yous grew shorter. The laughter came less. The smiles that once reached her eyes stopped halfway. He didn't notice it at first. He chalked it up to stress, to life, to motherhood. He told himself, she's just tired, she'll come around. But deep down, he felt it. The weight, the imbalance. Like he was pouring and pouring, and the glass never filled. Until one day, after making dinner, after putting her child to bed, after checking her mailbox on the way in, she sat across from him and didn't say a word, just stared at her phone, smiled at a text from someone else. And he knew, in that moment, that what he thought was being built was not being shared. That love, when unreciprocated, no matter how noble, will always leave a man empty. But still he stayed. Because men like him, they don't walk away easily. Not when they've made a promise, even if that promise was never asked for or returned. At first, it was just small things, nothing dramatic, nothing explosive. She stopped laughing at his jokes, stopped texting back with emojis and paragraphs, stopped kissing him on the cheek when he handed her the grocery bags. He noticed, but he didn't panic. He chalked it up to stress. Maybe she was tired. Maybe the weight of motherhood was catching up. But slowly, day by day, something inside her grew colder. Conversations turned into checklists. Affection turned into obligation. Dinner went from homemade to takeout. Hugs became side glances. Morning started without, "Good morning." And then came the comments. Subtle, strategic, sharp. Real men don't need to be asked twice. A real father wouldn't hesitate. You act like you want us, but you're always half in, half out. He wasn't sure when her warmth became a weapon. But it did. And what hurt most was that it worked. Because he started feeling guilty. Not because he'd done anything wrong, but because he wasn't doing enough to fast enough. So he stepped up again. Not with flowers, not with gifts, but with something far more serious and far more permanent. He told her one evening, as they sat at the kitchen table, "If it helps the boy, I can sign something. I can be listed. I don't mind." She looked up. Her eyes lit up for the first time in weeks. She said, "Really? You'd do that for us?" He smiled, nodded. "It's just paperwork," he said. But what he didn't know was that those papers, they weren't a declaration of love. They were a contract, one he could never walk away from. Because in many places, in many courtrooms, the law doesn't care about biology. It cares about behavior. If you feed a child, clothe him, take him to school, claim him in public, you are, in the court's eyes, a parent, not legally by blood, but legally by action. And parents don't get to just walk away. Not when feelings fade. Not when relationships crumble. Not when she decides to leave. He didn't know that. He just thought he was doing the right thing. Helping, supporting, proving his love. But instead, he was writing the first line of his own sentence. He didn't need to be married. He didn't need to be on the birth certificate. He didn't even need her to stay. All he needed was to have been present long enough, active enough, committed enough, and the state could say, "You acted like a father, so now you'll pay like one." He had no clue, no lawyer, no warning. Just the weight of quiet decisions made in moments of pressure now wrapped in legal consequence. And here's the cruelest irony of all. He didn't make that choice for himself. He made it for her, for the child, for the image of the man he thought he should be. And in doing so, he signed away the very freedom he'd spent years building. Not out of love, not out of vision, but out of guilt. And in the world of relationships, there is no contract more dangerous than the one written in guilt and sealed with silence. Most people, especially other men, would look at his story and say, "How could you be so blind?" But that's the wrong question, because blindness implies stupidity. And this man was not stupid. He was disciplined, educated, thoughtful. But there's a certain kind of man, the one who's carried the weight of the world in silence, who becomes vulnerable not in weakness, but in his strength. The kind of man who's always helped, always fixed, always made things work, no matter the cost. And when that man meets a woman who says, "I need you," it doesn't feel like manipulation. It feels like meaning. Because no one ever taught him the difference between being needed and being used. So why do men, especially good, grounded men, walk straight into these traps? Let's pull the curtain back. Not with judgment, but with clarity. Because the answer is layered. And most of it starts long before she ever showed up. First, he was taught that love must be earned. From a young age, many men learn that their value is transactional. Do more, and you matter more. Provide, and you'll be respected. Fix problems, and you'll be loved. So when he meets someone with needs, emotional, financial, maternal, something in him awakens. It feels like purpose, like calling, like a test he can finally pass. He doesn't ask what he's receiving. He only asks, "How much can I give?" And in that question, he disappears. Second, he thinks he's the exception. This is where it gets dangerous. He sees the red flags, hears the warnings, watches his friends go through bitter divorces, custody battles, child support court dates. But he whispers to himself, "She's not like that. She's different." And maybe she is. But that's not the point. The point is, love is not a gamble you win with good intentions. It's a responsibility you carry with clear vision. But when a man believes he can love someone enough to heal her wounds, raise her child, and fix the scars left by another man, he becomes something tragic, a savior chasing validation. And saviors? They bleed the deepest. Third, he mistakes suffering for strength. This one's subtle, but real. Men are often praised for holding it down, for being the rock, for taking it like a man. So when the relationship becomes one-sided, when the weight gets heavier, when her gratitude turns into expectation, he doesn't flinch, He takes it. He keeps giving. Keeps showing up. Keeps suppressing every sign that something is off. Why? Because he's been conditioned to think that endurance equals love. But love isn't supposed to be a marathon of silent sacrifice. It's supposed to be mutual, honest, reciprocal. And if he can't say no, if he can't speak up, if he can't walk away when he's being drained, then it's not love he's practicing. It's codependency, dressed in discipline. So no, he wasn't blind. He saw the signs, felt the weight, even sensed the imbalance. But he didn't have the language, didn't have the permission, didn't have the community of men around him saying, "Brother, you deserve more than this." So he stayed. He gave. He compromised. Until all that was left was a shell of himself, standing in a life he didn't recognize. Not because he was dumb, but because no one ever warned him that a man's goodness without wisdom can be his undoing. It started like most endings with silence. Not the kind that screams, the kind that settles. That replaces laughter with glances, affection with formality, presence with polite distance. She no longer asked him to stay late, no longer smiled when he kissed her forehead. The child, once excited when he walked through the door, began calling him by his first name again. Not Dad. Just him. He felt it, but didn't want to name it, because naming it would mean facing it, and facing it would mean he'd failed. So instead of confronting the drift, he did what many men do. He worked harder, bought more, showed up more, convinced himself it was just a phase, that relationships go through seasons, that maybe she was going through something, that maybe he just needed to be more patient, more understanding, more giving. But deep down he knew. The turning point came on a Thursday. She asked him not to come over. Said she needed time to think. End of. He didn't argue, just nodded, and left. 2 days later she texted, "We need space." No explanation. No, thank you. No, let's talk. Just distance. And then came the unraveling. Weeks passed. She stopped returning his calls. He noticed a new car in her driveway, not his. Saw photos on social media of her smiling again, not with him. And he knew without a doubt he had been replaced. But what he didn't expect was what came next. A letter. Not from her, from an attorney. The message was clear. They were exploring legal responsibility for child support. For the child that wasn't his. He laughed at first, thought it was a joke, a mistake. But it wasn't, because he had done all the things a father would do. He'd taken the child to school, signed medical forms, introduced him as my boy in public, posted photos of the three of them on Facebook, and while none of it was legal, it was enough for the state to ask questions, because when it comes to family court, perception matters more than paperwork, and in the eyes of the system, he acted like a father. So now, he was being treated like one. No marriage, no custody agreement, no DNA connection, but still responsible. He tried to protest, said it wasn't fair, said he was never told this could happen, but the court didn't care about what he felt. They cared about what he did. And what he did was everything a father would do. And now, he was expected to keep doing it, even though she had walked away, even though she'd moved on, even though his heart and his finances were left in pieces. He sat in his car for hours that night, didn't call anyone, didn't cry, just stared at the dashboard, replaying every moment where he should have drawn a line, but didn't. Every moment he should have asked questions, but stayed silent. Every moment he confused love with sacrifice. And the hardest truth of all, he didn't feel angry. He felt ashamed, not because he loved her, but because he forgot to love himself in the process. Because sometimes the deepest pain isn't betrayal, it's self-betrayal. And what he didn't see coming wasn't the end of the relationship. It was the beginning of the consequence. A consequence he would carry legally, emotionally, financially, long after the love had left. The hardest part wasn't the money. It wasn't the court letters. It wasn't the child support threats or the bank account that now felt thinner than it should have been. No, the deepest wound was identity. Because when a man gives his best, his time, his loyalty, his protection, and it still isn't enough, something inside him breaks. Quietly, irreversibly. He begins to doubt the value of everything he once stood for. What's the point of being a good man if goodness makes you a target? What's the point of loyalty if it's leveraged against you? What's the point of showing up if the only reward is being left behind? That's what he sat with. Not bitterness, not rage, just a hollow kind of ache, like someone had quietly stolen the mirror from his life and replaced it with a version of himself he no longer recognized. He used to see strength in his reflection. Now, he saw a man who confused provision with partnership, who mistook approval for love, who thought that doing more would make her stay. But love, he realized too late, doesn't work like that. Love doesn't require you to bankrupt your identity. It doesn't demand silence in exchange for affection. It doesn't punish generosity with abandonment. And yet that's exactly what he experienced. He wasn't mad at her. Not entirely. In fact, part of him still hoped she'd text, call, apologize, say, "I didn't mean for it to go this far." But she never did. And the silence? It confirmed what he feared most. That to her he was never a man. Just a means, a chapter, a convenience. And once that utility expired, so did her affection. But here's the real tragedy. He let it happen. Not because he was stupid, but because he didn't know the cost of emotional blindness, the cost of ignoring his own instincts, the cost of silencing that quiet voice that whispered, in the beginning, "Something feels off." He felt it when she first hinted about money. He felt it when the warmth began to cool. He felt it when the child started calling him dad before she ever called him husband. But he overrode it, with logic, with loyalty, with the desperate hope that maybe, this time, love would look like it does in the movies. He wanted to believe that being good would be enough. But goodness without boundaries is not strength. It's surrender. And surrendering your identity to someone who hasn't earned it, that's not love. That's quiet self-destruction. He sat alone now. Same house, same job, same toothbrush in the same cup, on the same sink. But everything felt different. Because the cost wasn't just financial, it was spiritual. He no longer trusted his own judgment, no longer believed his heart knew what it was doing. And that's what most people don't talk about. When a man gives deeply, and it fails, he doesn't just lose the relationship. He loses parts of himself he may never get back. And rebuilding? It doesn't start with dating again. It starts with this: looking in the mirror and saying, "I missed it, but I won't miss it again." Because the cost of emotional blindness is never just what she takes. It's what you give away, without knowing you're bleeding. This story isn't rare. Thousands of men fall into this pattern every year. They fall for a struggling single mom, lead with their wallet instead of their wisdom, assume fatherly roles without clarity or boundaries, end up emotionally and legally entangled in something they never built. Here are the traps most never see coming. Trap 1. Thinking you can fix her life. You can help, but you can't heal. And trying to save someone often ends with you needing saving. Trap 2. Confusing her child's love with hers. Kids are easy to bond with, but don't mistake affection from the child as commitment from the mother. Trap 3. Signing or saying the wrong things. Legal systems look at actions, not bloodlines. If you file joint taxes, sign as guardian, or present yourself publicly as a parent, it could cost you. So what could he have done differently? Let's get real. This isn't about avoiding single mothers entirely. Many are amazing women, strong, loving, deserving. But as a man, your job is not to fill a role she created without you. Your job is to protect your purpose. And that requires Satu, clear boundaries. Never move in, never pay major bills, never act as legal father unless married and intentional. R. Clarity before commitment. Ask yourself, is she seeking partnership? Or provision? Does she love me? Or the help I provide? 3. Value yourself first. You are not an emotional crutch. You are not a plan B. You are a man with value, direction, legacy. Don't trade that for someone else's past. Unless you've been truly invited into their future, men need to talk, not about hate, not about blame, but about wisdom, about choosing carefully. Because in today's world, love can be leveraged, kindness can be commodified, and good intentions can become legal obligations. This isn't about being cold. It's about being clear. If you're a man watching this, stop apologizing for having standards. Stop feeling guilty for not rescuing someone. Stop thinking you owe your resources to people who've only offered you temporary affection. Your legacy matters, your peace matters, and your decisions shape both. He thought love meant sacrifice, but now he knows. True love doesn't require you to burn yourself, to keep someone else warm. He still believes in love, but this time, it will be mutual, it will be mature, and it will be built not on guilt, but on grounded trust. If you've ever felt like you gave too much, too fast, to the wrong person, leave a quiet comment below. I learned the hard way, but I won't forget. Because brother, you're not dumb. You just forgot to protect the most important thing, you.